Found my son sitting on the curb outside a closed gas station at the edge of town, his backpack beside him, his eyes hollow like something inside him had already given up. It was nearly midnight, and the neon sign above the pumps flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. When he saw my truck pull in, he didn't smile or wave. He just stared at me and said, "Dad, she said I wasn't worth the trouble." My heart dropped straight into my boots. I hadn't seen him in 3 months, not since the court gave his mother full custody after our divorce. He looked thinner, older somehow, like those 90 days had taken years off his childhood. I stepped out of the truck slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast, he might disappear like smoke. "What happened, Jake?" I asked. He shrugged, trying to act tough, but his voice cracked. "Mom's boyfriend said I was just extra baggage. Said the rent was too high and there wasn't room for someone who didn't belong." He kicked the curb, staring at his sneakers. "So she told me to pack a bag. Said maybe you'd take me." I didn't say anything at first. I just wrapped my arms around him. He felt so light, like I could lift him with one hand. This was my boy, the kid who used to fall asleep on my chest during Sunday football games, the one who laughed so hard at my bad jokes that milk would come out of his nose. And now he was sitting on a cold curb at midnight because someone decided he was extra baggage. I opened the truck door and told him to get in. He didn't ask where we were going. He just climbed in, clutching that worn-out backpack like it was the only thing he owned in the world. We drove in silence for a while, the road stretching out ahead of us like a dark ribbon. Finally, he asked, "Are you mad at me?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Mad at you? For what?" He swallowed. "For not being enough." That sentence hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I pulled the truck over and looked at him. "Listen to me, son. You were never the problem. Not then, not now, not ever." He blinked fast like he was trying to keep the tears from spilling. "Then why did everyone leave?" he whispered. I didn't have a perfect answer, but I told him the truth. Sometimes grown-ups make selfish choices, but that has nothing to do with your worth. We didn't go back to my small apartment that night. Instead, I drove straight to the old house I had grown up in, the one sitting at the end of a dirt road outside town. My dad had left it to me years ago, but I never had the heart to move back after he passed. The porch light still worked. When it flickered on, Jake looked at me like he was seeing something he hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "Are we staying here?" he asked. I nodded. "If you want to." He smiled for the first time that night. It was small, but it was real. The house wasn't much to look at. The paint on the porch railings was peeling, the yard was full of weeds, and the screen door creaked like it was complaining about being opened after so long. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old memories. Jake stepped in carefully, like he was afraid to touch anything. "Did you grow up here?" he asked. I nodded. Every summer, every Christmas, every birthday. He looked around the living room at the faded couch and the old stone fireplace. "It feels warm," he said softly. That night, we didn't have beds ready, so we slept on the floor in front of the fireplace, wrapped in old quilts I found in the closet. I lay awake for a long time, listening to Jake's breathing, promising myself that no matter what it took, I'd never let him feel unwanted again. The next few weeks were hard. The roof leaked when it rained, the plumbing groaned every time we turned on the faucet, and the fridge hummed like it was about to give up any second. But every morning, Jake would sit at the kitchen table eating cereal, talking about school, about baseball, about the comic books he liked. Slowly, the life came back into his eyes. We fixed things together. Loose floorboards, broken cabinets, the sagging fence out back. I showed him how to hold a hammer, how to measure twice before cutting wood, how to patch a leak with whatever we had. One afternoon, after we finished painting his new room a bright shade of blue, he flopped onto the mattress and laughed. "This is the first room that's ever been just mine," he said. School wasn't easy at first. He was the new kid, the one who showed up halfway through the semester. Some kids whispered, others just ignored him. But then he tried out for the baseball team. I sat in the bleachers, my hands clenched, watching him swing the bat like his life depended on it. When he connected with the ball and sent it flying into the outfield, the coach nodded. A week later, Jake came home with a grin stretched across his face. "I made the team, Dad," he shouted. I pulled him into a hug so tight he laughed and told me I was crushing him. That winter money got tight. I picked up extra shifts at the garage, coming home with grease on my hands and exhaustion in my bones. But every time I walked through that door, Jake would be there, either doing homework at the table or waiting with 2 plates of reheated leftovers. "You work too hard," he'd say, and I'd smile and tell him it's worth it, because it was. Every scraped knuckle, every long shift, every late bill, it was all worth it to see him safe, warm, and smiling again. One night, while we were fixing a broken cabinet together, he said quietly, "Dad, I think this is the first time in a long time I feel like I belong somewhere." I set down the screwdriver and looked at him. "You always belong, son. You just needed the right place." A year later, we stood in that same kitchen, only this time the cabinets were new, the walls were painted, and there was laughter filling the air. Jake had made the baseball team again, this time as a starting player, and his coach said he had real talent. As we sat down for dinner, he looked at me and said, "Thanks for picking me up that night." I smiled. "I'd drive 1,000 miles for you, kid." He shook his head. "You didn't just pick me up, you saved me." And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes being a parent isn't about having all the answers or the perfect life. Sometimes it's just about showing up when your child is sitting on a cold curb, believing they don't belong anywhere. Because one ride home, one open door, one person who refuses to give up on them, that can change everything. The old house at the end of the dirt road wasn't fancy. It didn't have shiny floors or big windows or a perfect lawn, but it had something better. It had warmth, laughter, and a boy who finally knew he wasn't extra baggage. He was my son, and as long as I was breathing, he'd always have a place to come home to. Years from now, when that house is painted again and the porch swing creaks under the weight of new memories, I know Jake will remember that night at the gas station, not as the night he was thrown away, but as the night he was found. Because sometimes the darkest moment in a person's life is just a road sign pointing them back to where they truly belong. And for Jake, that place was never the curb under a flickering neon light. It was the passenger seat of an old pickup truck headed towards a home where he would always be enough.